Yo, what's going on YouTube? Jan Moses here to react to the major NBA trade that went down earlier this afternoon between the Toronto Raptors and my beloved New York Knicks. Toronto sending OG Anunoby along with Precious Achua and Malachi Flynn to the Knicks, and in return, the Knicks are sending RJ Barrett, Emmanuel Quickley, and the Detroit Pistons second rounder that the Knicks have, which will, and more than likely it's going to end up being the 31st pick in the draft in 2024. Speaking of the Pistons, very, very briefly here, I just want to comment that the Pistons are playing against the Raptors tonight. I think it's pretty funny that, RJ Barrett and Emmanuel Quickley are not going to be eligible to play in the game tonight, and they're not going to have OG Anunoby or Precious Achua, Malachi Flynn. Not that the latter two are really that big of a deal at all. But they're not going to have those three players involved in that trade coming to the Knicks available for them tonight. So hopefully the Pistons can finally win a game for the first time in 6 weeks? I don't know. We'll have to see. But that's not what I'm here to talk about. I'm here to talk about this trade. I've heard and I've read a lot of pretty crazy takes. And look, everyone is entitled to their own opinion. No one knows how this trade is going to pan out. No one knows how these players are going to pan out on their new teams. I'm just here to, throw my hat into the ring and share my opinion for how I view this trade on both sides, mostly from a New York Knicks perspective, because I'm not as familiar with the Raptors and what direction they're going in. All I know is I think the Raptors are closer to having a fire sale with their roster than they are trying to acquire talent to make a push like they did when they traded for Kawhi Leonard a few years ago with San Antonio. I do want to start with Emmanuel Quickley, even though RJ Barrett's name is the first one that pops up on the Knicks side of the deal here, because I do think Emmanuel Quickley is the prize in this trade for Masai Ujiri and the Toronto Raptors. Quickley this year has been playing very well. He's been incredibly efficient coming off the bench for the Knicks. You could see here he's been scoring 15 points. Does it say how many minutes he's been playing here? Do I have to scroll down? Maybe we can go to per game. Will it show me his minutes per game here? Yeah, you can see here he's playing 24 minutes a game, so almost 5 minutes per game less than he's been playing since last year, and that is one of the reasons why I thought he was going to get traded personally. His just his involvement in the rotation was really not all that impressive in terms of, like, when he was playing he was very impressive, but Thibodeau really wasn't running him as much as I thought he would, and now it kind of makes sense. But when he was on the floor for the Knicks this year, he was incredibly efficient. I think he was routinely the first person off the bench, usually in favor of RJ Barrett going to the bench. IQ's he's been great, and I love him. I love him and RJ just like how I loved Obi when the Knicks drafted Obi Toppin in that same draft class with Emmanuel Quickley. And I believe the reports that I read all summer that the Knicks and IQ did try to get a deal done before the deadline for Quickley to get a deal done with the Knicks, which was, I believe, either the day of or the day before the start of the NBA regular season this year. But they couldn't agree on a number, or they couldn't agree on the number of years. More than likely, it was on an annual number. I feel like Quickley probably wanted somewhere around the 20 to, or maybe not 20, maybe the $25 million a year range. And the Knicks probably said no to that. And I think that makes sense to me. Emmanuel Quickley, he's in the last year of his rookie deal, so he's going to be a restricted free agent come next summer. IQ is just too good of a player to let walk. But, if he wants $25 million a year, his role on the Knicks as currently constituted doesn't warrant $25 million a year. No matter how well he plays, he's been, like I said, incredibly efficient on the Knicks. But the Knicks can't afford to pay a player like Quickley. And when I say a player like Quickley, I mean a player who's in Quickley's role, $25 million a year. It just does not make sense. The way the tax aprons are with the salary cap after that got renegotiated last year. I believe all the penalties either take into effect this year or the following year. The teams that are in the luxury tax, especially those that are repeat offenders, are going to have to pay a really hefty fine. and I don't think the Knicks want to do that. And $25 million a year for Quickley makes a lot of sense if he's going to be a starter for you, but he was never going to start on the Knicks. A backcourt of him and Jalen Brunson never made sense to me, and his scoring off the bench was really much more valuable than him starting for the Knicks, in my opinion. Another thing with Immanuel Quickley, and I feel like I did not see enough people cover this, and it's not like there was a large sample size or anything, and a lot of the Knicks as a whole struggled in their 2 playoff runs. The one, as I mentioned, in the We Here year in 2020 when the Knicks played against Atlanta. I'm not sure if I mentioned that actually or not. And then in this most recent playoff run last season where the Knicks played in 2 playoff series, you can see here that Quickley, namely in the most recent playoff series, you can see that in 22 minutes a game, he only scored 9 points per game, and he shot 35% from the field, which is really not that great. We really needed more from Immanuel Quickley. He was, top 2 in the 6th Man of the Year race. I think he just barely lost it to Malcolm Brogdon last year. And I personally, bias aside, I think Quickley provided the Knicks with much more value in his bench minutes than Brogdon did. And I'm not sure if Quickley didn't get it because he started a few games for the Knicks and he had massive performances in those games. But in the postseason when the Knicks really needed him, or they needed anyone to help Jalen Brunson out because Julius Randle didn't do anything, RJ Barrett did, he put up numbers, but it was mostly in that Heat series. Quickley was a no-show in all 3 series that the Knicks played in the postseason while Quickley was a member of the Knicks. So that was always really frustrating for me, and I know Quickley did get injured in the latter half of the playoffs this past season, but just really, really disappointing for me. I felt like, when you're in the postseason and teams game plan for you, we saw Julius Randle really struggle to adjust compared to in the regular season where they're not, scheming for Randle as much. And I feel like the same kind of thing happened to Quickley where they were able to really make him uncomfortable. And as a result, he really wasn't effective for the Knicks at all in the playoffs. So the other thing I want to comment on, I mentioned it a little bit earlier on while talking about Quickley. Immanuel Quickley is going to be a restricted free agent next summer, which means, if a team like the Pistons, who are going to probably have a good amount of cap space and they're going to need talent, they're going to need scoring, I think an Immanuel Quickley, Cade Cunningham backcourt could be a lot of fun to watch. And so the Pistons, if they want, they could throw an insane offer sheet Immanuel Quickley's way, and Immanuel Quickley will more than likely accept that offer sheet because why wouldn't you want to take a lot of money if a team's throwing a lot of money at you? And then Toronto basically just has the right to match. So, Toronto's probably going to have a lot of cap space too. We'll see if they end up dealing Pascal Siakam. But I would not be shocked if Quickley gets signed to an offer sheet from a team that is not the Toronto Raptors this summer and is going to end up forcing Toronto's hand to match that offer because, again, Immanuel Quickley, in my opinion, is the prize in this trade. And they gave up OG Anunoby, who I think is a pretty big part of the Raptors core, even though I know they've been shedding players from that team over the last couple of years. They lost Fred VanVleet over the summer, for example. So, we'll have to see. I think Quickley is going to put up huge numbers in Toronto. He's set up to do so. And I love IQ. I hope he kills it over there. I hope he makes all the money in the world, next summer. I just don't think the best version of Immanuel Quickley would have come out on the Knicks just because the Knicks have Jalen Brunson there, I remember saying the same kind of thing about Obi Toppin, and Immanuel Quickley at his role is a much better player than Obi Toppin is at his role, let me be very clear. But Obi Toppin was never going to do much on the Knicks because the Knicks have Julius Randle, and Randle was going to take the majority of the power forward minutes, and Obi Toppin went to the Pacers, and we'll see how knowing me, kind of talking down on Obi Toppin this game, Obi's going to have a good game against the Knicks tonight because the Knicks play the Pacers, I think, in a couple of hours, but Obi Toppin has not been great in Indiana. I think Immanuel Quickley will be great for the Raptors, and he deserves to get paid by a team that's going to give him 35 minutes a night. The Knicks just can't do that. Moving on to RJ Barrett. Just like Quickley, I loved RJ Barrett, and I was trying my best to be patient with him. Watching him do as well as he did in the playoffs last year brought me so much joy. And honestly, I have his game log from this season, and if you look here, these first few games, RJ looked so good, particularly from 3. I mean, not like he was shooting, insanely well, but if you look here, 2 for 5, 3 for 5, 3 for 5. Then he didn't dress for 2 games, and then 2 for 4, 5 for 9, 4 for 6. So he was really doing well. He basically had, he had one 16-point game and one 18-point game. Every other game, he had 24 or 26 points, which was awesome. You could see that outside of that loss to the Pelicans, he was a positive in the plus-minus, which I'm not a huge fan of the plus-minus number. I feel like it's a very skewed number. But this stretch here that he missed 3 games, he caught the flu or something. He was out. And after he came back, RJ was just not the same. I feel like, he started off the season on that heater, he gets sick, and then he comes back, and I felt like I was going back to watching the old RJ Barrett, the one that, frustrated me to no end. I mean, you can see he's a couple of games where he shoots the ball, relatively well, but for the most part, his 3-point shooting percentage was not great in a lot of these games, and that's what made it really frustrating. I mean, these last couple of games alone, last night he goes 1 for 5 from 3. Earlier this week against Oklahoma City, he goes 1 for 7 from 3. And there was a quote that Tom Thibodeau gave. I forget if it was after the game last night or the Thunder game, which is really bad. I should know this if it was after the game last night, but it may have been after the Thunder game, where I think it was OKC, because the Knicks were making a comeback, and then with like 4 or 5 minutes left, Thibodeau benched RJ Barrett for benched Emmanuel Quickley for RJ Barrett, and the reporter who was asking the questions asked Coach Thibodeau why did you bench Emmanuel Quickley in favor of RJ, and I think Thibodeau gave an answer along the lines of just size. And it's true. If you look at the Knicks roster, which I don't know if I have it up here. No, this does not show their heights. It's just the contracts. But if you were to pull up a sheet with, or whatever on the internet, if you were to go on like any website that shows, the Knicks opening day roster for 2023, if you look at all of their players, their non-power forwards and centers, the majority of their players are all like 6'6" and under, and the only players that are actually 6'6" or 6'7" are Evan Fournier, who doesn't see the floor for the Knicks, and RJ Barrett. Everyone else is 6'1", 6'3", 6'4", and that's it. I mean, we have Josh Hart, who's a 6'4" guard, playing power forward minutes. The Knicks are just a really, really small team. And so, to me, it's nice that you get to deal, RJ, who is 6'6", and Quickley, who's like, 6'2", 6'3", and you get to bring in a 6'7" wing in OG Anunoby. So that to me is pretty exciting, for that alone. And then RJ, outside of his stats kind of dropping, he's in year 1 of a 4-year, $107 million contract. This contract's not going to look bad in a year or two as the cap goes up like 10% every single year, but it's just nice that the Knicks don't have to pay RJ this salary anymore, and now the Knicks can allocate, those resources towards other players. I mean, OG's a free agent this upcoming summer. The Knicks are going to have to probably pay him upwards of $40 million a year, and that number sounds crazy now. That number's not going to sound crazy in 2 years. So, it's just, and the other thing with RJ, before I move on to my general thoughts on this trade, RJ, he was just not great at floor spacing. You saw his numbers there shooting from 3 after he came back from illness. Really not great. And, he's not the player that you want when you have Jalen Brunson, who, while he's been shooting lights out from 3 this year, Jalen Brunson is at his best when he can attack the basket, shoot that fadeaway from the mid-range. And then you have Julius Randle, who, Randle, he can hit threes, but I think all Knicks fans would much rather him, have that bull in a China shop mentality and attack the paint, because he's aggressive and it's so tough to stop him. He really is like a freight train when he's attacking the basket. So when you have a guy like RJ Barrett, who teams will happily have, help defenders come off of RJ, because I think leaving RJ Barrett open for 3 more nights than not is a win for that defense. It hurts the Knicks floor spacing, especially when you look at the Knicks when they're healthy, having a lineup of, day 1, I guess, of the 2023 season, the Knicks had, it was Jalen Brunson, who can hit threes, obviously. You had Quentin Grimes, who he's kind of hit or miss from 3. I kind of hope he can figure himself out now that he has, a clear avenue to get more minutes with Quickley and RJ gone. So Brunson, Quentin Grimes, RJ Barrett, who really can't hit threes that consistently well, Julius Randle, who I guess he can, but you'd rather him attack the basket, and then Mitchell Robinson, who has no perimeter shooting. He's just a roll guy on offense. There's no floor spacing. Whereas now you throw in OG Anunoby, he doesn't need the ball to be effective on offense. I think he's like 40% from the corners shooting threes this year. And and he's just such a good defender. I mean, we can get now to the part of the trade that I'm really excited about, which is OG Anunoby. I think the reasons that I listed are the reasons why I'm so excited. You have a player who's still pretty young. He's, an elite wing defender, and the Knicks have not had that. The Knicks would struggle against teams like the Celtics, who have guys like Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, because the only wing defender they could put on them were RJ Barrett and Quentin Grimes, who's like 6'4", 6'5", and Tatum's like 6'8", 6'9", Jaylen Brown's like 6'6", 6'7". So now at least you have a guy who can, I think, honestly defend 1 to 4. You keep Quentin Grimes, who I think is the Knicks' other point of attack defender, which I think that's going to be really great, because I want to be able to have OG conserve some of his energy defensively, because I think OG Anunoby, I've read reports, over the last couple of years that OG wants a more prominent role on the offensive side of the floor, and I think he's going to get that here with the Knicks. So, I'm just excited for, Brunson, OG, and Randall. I also think this is not the only trade the Knicks are going to do. It may be the only trade the Knicks do this season, but I think the Knicks are in a great position for future trades, because yes, while they lose Quickley and they lose RJ, what they did not lose in this trade were any first round picks. I don't know if you guys like to listen to NBA podcasts, but I'm a big fan of the Low Post. I think Zach Lowe is one of the most well-connected people in the NBA when it comes to the media side of things. And while he did walk this statement back a little bit, earlier this year, I forget exactly when, on one of his episodes of the Low Post, Zach Lowe said that OG Anunoby would warrant, a trade for OG Anunoby. The team trading for him would have to basically send out 3 unprotected firsts along with young talent. And so the fact that the Knicks gave up Emmanuel Quickley, who, the Knicks, I don't think really had any intentions of signing Quickley to the number that he's going to ultimately get or that he ultimately wanted, and RJ Barrett, who the Knicks were very patient with, and it just was not working with him alongside Brunson and Randall, to give up those 2 players along with just a second round pick. So the Knicks keep all of their first round picks along with the 4 first rounders that are not there, that have different protections on them and whatnot. But first rounders are first rounders. You can throw those into deals, and there are no salary values attached to those picks until a player is picked at those respective picks. You don't have to worry about things like different trade clauses, the Stepien rule or whatever it's called, where you can't trade back-to-back picks from your own team. The Knicks have 4 future first rounders, so they can kind of mitigate through clauses like that when they're dealing with potential future superstar trades. And I know that's been like the big thing with Knicks fans for years. We're always looking for that one superstar trade, and that superstar may never end up coming here. Maybe that star ends up not being a guy like a Joel Embiid or a Giannis Antetokounmpo. Maybe it ends up being Donovan Mitchell. Maybe it ends up being nobody. Who knows? All I know is that the Knicks, in my opinion, they may not necessarily have a higher ceiling. I totally get that in terms of trading RJ Barrett and Emmanuel Quickley for OG Anunoby, but I think the Knicks' floor is much higher, and I think that's all the Knicks are trying to do right now, is you're trying to increase your floor slowly until you get that superstar that comes in, and then you can blow the roof off this joint, and then the Knicks can hopefully be contenders, because that's the goal. And that's the last thing I'll leave you with, is I loved RJ Barrett just like how I love Emmanuel Quickley, and I want to see both of those players flourish in Toronto and flourish wherever they end up going after next season, whether they stay in Toronto or they go somewhere else. The Knicks were not going to win anything with this roster if they kept it the way it was. Even if they were to run it back next year with a healthy Mitchell Robinson, they'd be a fun team to watch, whose ceiling is probably either a second round exit or an Eastern Conference Finals exit. They were, I think, and even then, like, an Eastern Conference Finals is like even past their true ceiling to me. That would be like if the team they played in the second round had injuries. Like, if you look at this past playoff series, I think the Knicks had, or past playoffs, the Knicks, I think, had more talent than Miami, but Miami just had a better scheme, and the Knicks couldn't capitalize, and they ended up losing. And Miami showed that against Boston as well, because, I mean, Boston was a more talented team than Miami, and Milwaukee was as well than Miami. So, if the Knicks are able to beat Miami just because they were the more talented team, and they did take Miami to 6 games, all of a sudden the Knicks are in the Eastern Conference Finals. So the Knicks could have maybe done that this year if Mitch was healthy. Who knows? But I think OG Anunoby sets the Knicks up very nicely. I think Brunson will look even better. I think Randall will look even better. I think OG Anunoby will probably look even better. I know Raptors fans were kind of down on him this year, but I think having him play alongside Julius and Jalen will really, really help OG a lot. And like I said, I think there's still one more deal left to be done. At least one more major deal. The Knicks could end up making another deal. For like another, maybe like a backup center. Speaking of backups, I know a lot of Raptors fans are not very bullish on Precious Achiuwa. I think I'm just happy to have a backup four. That's all I'm happy about. You lose Obi over the summer, and you expect a 6'4" guy in Josh Hart, who I love Josh Hart's effort. I don't want him playing significant minutes at backup four. I really don't. But Precious Achiuwa at 6'8", just throw him in there. Let Tom Thibodeau work with him. I'm so excited to see how Tom Thibodeau works with the rotations that he has accessible to him, given the talent that came in. I'm also excited to see Deuce McBride get more minutes. I love Deuce. I think he's like nothing special by any means, but he just gives us such intensity defensively. And speaking of the bench, I'm a little worried about the Knicks bench, but again, we'll see what happens. I'm just happy that the Knicks have OG Anunoby. I think this is a win-win trade for both sides. For Toronto, I expect IQ to do very well. Like I said, RJ is the wild card. If Quickley does very well and RJ plays very, very well, then it goes without saying that this deal is a home run for Toronto. But I think for the Knicks, this deal alone is borderline a home run, which is probably not a popular take right now, but that's my opinion, because the Knicks didn't give up any future draft capital outside of a second round pick. I thought OG was going to need, or to get OG freed from Toronto, the Knicks would have to send Masai Ujiri multiple unprotected first round picks. That's what Zach Lowe said, and I believed it. I was reading similar reports over the summer, and I know there's a lot of reports that are thrown left and right over the summer during the free agency period, but I believed it. And then there was that whole scandal with the Knicks and the Raptors earlier this summer as well, and when I saw that, I thought, okay, well, OG Anunoby to the Knicks is dead. They're not going to want to do any deals with the Knicks now because the Knicks are basically suing Toronto. But I'm excited about the Knicks, man. I think the Knicks are a better team now that they have OG, and I think Toronto's a better team now that they have Quickley and RJ. And RJ gets to go back home and play. And, I know that they're in the same division, the Knicks and the Raptors, but I'm going to still root for the Raptors to do well now that they have two of my favorite Knicks players from the past decade. So, yeah, that's all I have for you. Last thing, actually, really quickly, I forgot. I have one more tab open here. To the people that are saying that, the Knicks don't have any more assets that they can trade, outside of the first rounders because they gave up their two most valuable pieces in RJ Barrett and Emmanuel Quickley. Well, if you watch RJ Barrett playing the last few weeks, really after he came back from his illness, RJ Barrett he's at his lowest right now, so if anything, Masai Ujiri is buying RJ at his lowest value. And Emmanuel Quickley, like I said, I don't think the Knicks are going to re-sign him. If you take a look, if you add all the first round picks that the Knicks have, alongside, you have Evan Fournier, who's an expiring. You have, the Knicks wouldn't trade him, but Mitchell Robinson's on a great deal. I think Josh Hart's on a really nice deal. DiVincenzo's on a really cheap deal, signing the mid-level for 4 years over the summer. Hartenstein, the Knicks are not going to trade him. I love Hartenstein. He's going to warrant a lot of money more than likely this offseason. Quentin Grimes is also still here. We can still trade Quentin Grimes. So the Knicks have a lot of contracts that they're going to have available to them to trade still, even with them trading for OG Anunoby and giving up RJ and Quickley, in the process. So the Knicks are in a great spot. I am very happy with this deal. I'm pretty shocked that people are bashing the Knicks and saying that the Raptors fleeced the Knicks. But then again, the low-hanging fruit whenever it comes to any trade involving the Knicks is LOL Knicks. So, if you're in that boat, more power to you. You're entitled to your own opinion. I just wanted to make a video stating mine. Hope you enjoyed. Hope you found this video kind of cool. I usually just cover my team stuff whenever I'm doing solo content, but I figured why not cover a trade involving my favorite team, trading for a wing player that I've really wanted them to add for a while. So OG Anunoby is a New York Knick. RJ and Emmanuel Quickley, you guys are awesome. I wish you guys all the best in Toronto, and we'll see how you guys do, over the border, I guess. Which, okay, last thing. I know I keep saying last thing. It seems like Quickly found out on Twitter that he got traded. Imagine finding out on Twitter that you're getting deported to Canada. Hilarious to me. All right, I appreciate you guys. Until next time, whenever that may be. I'll see you later.